Whew. Hey, welcome back to Use on Twitch. Back today with Abzan Maverick. Abzan Maverick is what I would consider the best version of Maverick right now. If you are wanting to take Maverick to a competitive event, I would be guessing that you should be taking Green White Black. The Black Splash gives you access to cards like main deck Abrupt Decay, main deck Kaya Usurper, and also Plague Engineer, which is probably the biggest draw for the deck outside of Abrupt Decay right now. But both obviously quite well positioned in the format, and they're colors that Maverick can really gain from, which is nice. Maverick does have a bit of a tough time with, if you're just relying on Swords to Plowshares and maybe Skyclave as a newer card, it can definitely be hard to find removal sometimes in a deck with no Ponders or Brainstorms. So to have, in this version, a pretty heavy 12 pieces of removal in the main deck is pretty nice. Of course, Kaya and Plague Engineer are a little bit more limited than the other ones, but having access to 4 Swords, 2 Decay, and 2 Skyclave in Game 1 against decks like Delver, I think will hopefully really shore up the ability for Arts to deal with an Arcanist, but also deal with a Delver that came down before it. Looking at the Green Sun Zenith package, it's actually pretty stocked. So we have from the get-go on turn 1, we have Hex Drinker as just another really good way to pressure opponents. I have gone back to playing Cradle, which I wasn't playing in my previous videos you can find on my YouTube channel, because we weren't really using it, and a lot of decks right now don't allow you to use it. Decks like Snow or Rug Delver, which you're going to run into, have a really good strategy of keeping you down to 1 threat or 1 creature at a time. So the ability to, really keep that down and turn Cradle off, I think for a long time made me consider how effective Cradle actually is as a card in the deck. But I do like it here because we are running Hex Drinker, which means we could do something in the broken starts is turn 1 Hierarch, turn 2 Hex Drinker, play Cradle, and then we have access to 3 mana left over, which is pretty cool. But the other card is Tireless Tracker. And I think Tireless Tracker is a pretty great card to try to leverage the value you can get out of some of your creatures, which you really need to do right now against decks like Snow. I have gone down to 3 Knights in the main, and I think that's because of a few things. I think where Knight shines, our matchup against those decks is already pretty substantial, so I don't think that the 4th Knight cut is going to be too bad. I think we're still going to be okay. And in the matchups where Snow isn't that, in the matchups like Snow where Knight isn't that great, I much rather have a 3 mana threat like Tireless Tracker, which allows us to draw some extra cards. And of course, with Ochre around, it's kind of nice to have a creature that has +1/+1 counters on it, a little bit like Ooze. So Ooze is also somewhat of a awkward creature to Elk, because these 2 creatures, of course, will keep their counters. So they won't just be 3/3s; they could be, anything above. So I do like Tracker. I do consider Tracker a 4-drop. Against a lot of decks, I wouldn't run it out straight away. I would wait to have the land drop, hopefully a fetch land, to play after I play the Tracker, just to make sure I get some sort of value off it. So we'll see how that goes. Hey, Ravenous Panda, welcome. A big thank you for the 6-month streak, and the nickfitbrew.neck is up, which is very cool. I'm sure some people would have seen the Blue Stew website that allowed you to create blue 75s based around Snow, and I believe only today nickfitbrew.net went live, so very cool to see that. But yeah, thank you very much, Panda. I really appreciate your support. So I guess the last thing to cover is the split of Nobles and Birds. This is mainly because Birds does produce black mana, which against some of the decks where I really want access to Abrupt Decay, like Death and Taxes or Rug, they can take you off it pretty aggressively with Wasteland. So having access to 2 birds is nice. And also, it's a little bit rough because they obviously can't attack, which is obviously worse as well in a deck with no Stoneforge Mystic package, so I can't turn the bird into a attacking creature with a sword. But this also leverages us a little bit better against Plague Engineer, because a lot of the time we'll either have humans in play, or my opponent will just naturally name human, which means that Noble and Thalia is kind of a letdown. So I've just changed up because I think access to black is a little bit better than the Exalted for that 4th one. So it should be interesting to see how it goes, because Birds can also just be really good if I'm trying to buy some time against Delver or Marit Lage. You know, it only takes one draw to draw removal to then get back into that game. So maybe having a second bird will come up. We're not playing Scrib Ranger, which I kind of wanted to, but it's just hard to find space. And without Mother of Runes or Stoneforge Mystic, it's a little bit harder to really establish white in the deck over another 2-drop or another Green Sun's target. So that should be pretty interesting as well if we do find situations where we wish we had it in the deck. To the board, the only real change is going for Aethersworn Canonist on top of Deafening Silence. I think with all this removal, I have a pretty good suite of hate for the fair matchup, so it's really the combo decks that I'm scared of. So we have 3 Deafening Silence to make sure we see it for turn 1. We have Leyline of the Void for the graveyard decks. Teeg, I just think is really good as a Green Sun's target right now. There's a bit of Terminus running around, and a few decks that have a bit of a hard time getting over it, so pretty happy to still have that. And Canonist is at least something that I can bring in against Elves, which I think against the Elvish Reclaimer builds, I would say we're actually favored, which is really weird to say as a Maverick player. I think especially with access to Plague Engineer from game 1 helps us a lot. The big issue is Natural Order into Progenitus. That's probably the best way that they can win. So being able to slow that down and try to keep them off creatures is really what I'm going to try to achieve. And of course, Gaddock Teeg helps against that deck as well, so that should be pretty good. Shifting Ceratops has been a house. I actually wanted to find space for it in the main deck, but I really want to have Beast, and I didn't want to have 2 4-drops. So I think unless I was playing in the Bant version that I play with 6 Mana Dorks, I wouldn't consider a second 4-drop at the moment. Kai Ghost Assassin has been pretty sweet against some of the control decks. It's also a way to reset a Plague Engineer, a Skyclave Apparition, or a Night of Autumn, which is kind of cool. And then Nissel Vital Force. So the big reason that I'm playing Nissel Vital Force is that it says, untap target land you control until your next turn. It becomes a 5/5 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. So the big issue that I've been having against Snow is that I do tend to take out 1 or 2 Wastelands, but the other 2 don't really have that much of a role against a deck that once knows you're on Maverick, aggressively fetches for basics. So I like that Nissa Vital Force turns Wasteland into a threat that they kind of have to use a resource on, like a removal spell. So I like that it kind of gives Wasteland a role, but it's also just a really good Planeswalker for sort of the combo, the control matchup. So that should be it. That's the deck tech. Let's get straight into a league and see how this goes. I haven't played the black version in a while, so pretty keen to see how it plays out. I hope you're all well. Hope you're having a great week. It's nice to be Friday here, which I assume for a lot of the Americans watching, it's only coming on to Friday morning. I think it's still quite early in America, but perhaps there's some Europeans here as well. This is a really good hand against any fair deck, but against a combo deck, it's a little lackluster. It does have an early threat, which is nice. We can do like turn 1 Hex Drinker, and then turn 2 we have Swords as removal, and then tick up Hex Drinker. Plague and Skyclave are pretty nice against most mid-range decks. I'm not too sure what my opponent is on, but I'm gonna keep this. It actually has a pretty nice suite of cards. I don't want to fetch yet because I'll definitely be fetching for a black source. So I think we'll just go Savannah into Plains. The only reason I might want to fetch early is that if we're up against a Bolt deck, I want to make sure my Knight of the Reliquary, if I draw it by turn 3, is a 4/4. And I can still do the fetch next turn anyway. Polluted Delta. Island, okay. That definitely makes me think it's just going to be combo, which is a little bit unfortunate. Maverick isn't a deck that can really afford to pivot. Quickly see what my opponent did. 2 cards to the bottom, so they're obviously trying to draw into something here. I don't mind just tick up Hex Drinker twice. And then Hope that if my opponent does go off with some sort of combo, that it's an Empty the Warrens finish and this Plague Engineer can clean up. But otherwise, we're kind of naked here. We don't have a Thalia. We don't have like a Green Suns for oof. Ah, so they actually played Delver in the last league, which is really interesting. There's not too much of a downside to not be playing Snow basics, which is funny because I actually just changed out, but only for aesthetics. Only because I like the beta basics, but there is some downside. So I'm running 3 basics, which if all of them were Snow, it means that if my opponent trades me an Icefang Quoddle with their Oko, I could give it Death Touch. Because I'm running these basics, I can't give it Death Touch, so... Yeah, pretty sweet island. I think a lot of the... I'm a big fan of the old school basics, but I do still have some amount of respect for the full arts. Wow, Ponder, Shuffle, and then Preordain... I think my best draw here is probably just Wasteland. 1 top, 1 bottom. Okay. Well, now I have the option of ticking up the Hex Drinker or playing out a 3-drop. You like the Mirage basics? Mirage basics are really nice, especially with that little, the little tree. I like that. Yeah, it definitely feels like Ant. So I could either increase my clock to make something like Ad Nauseam a little bit more difficult for my opponent, or I could play out another Reliquary here because it means that next turn I can Wasteland if I do get another turn. I unfortunately can't do both. And I think the best play is just to play Knight. Because it gives me some sort of interaction if my opponent is on combo. This is tough because if they were on some sort of Delver build, like a Grixis deck, it could be tough if they like daze this and then actually it opens me up to losing this Hex Drinker to something like Fatal Push or Lightning Bolt if they're on red. But the cantrip start definitely makes me think they're on combo. Especially with Preordain. Sometimes you see Preordain in the Young Pyromancer decks. I assume with Dreadhorde there's also some thought to playing it, but whenever I see a basic island Preordain, I think either Sneak Attack or some sort of Storm deck. Which is tough as well. I've definitely been caught out where I've put my opponent on something and taken a strategy to beat that and then realized they're on something completely different. A really good example of that, and I guess it's a little bit more forced, is where some of the Reanimator decks started playing Doomsday in the sideboard. So you'd bring in all this graveyard hate and they'd just Doomsday and Oracle you. And it would be a massive feel bad, but pretty cool kind of transitional sideboarding there. Hey Donut, welcome. We are currently playing Abzan, yeah. I thought it was time to go back to the dark side. And Skyclave Apparition has been a really nice printing, not just for Abzan, but for all of Maverick. I think just another way to run main deck removal that also pressures is pretty awesome. It also takes out the awkward attacks that you need to do to kill some Planeswalkers. So like attacking a 5/5 Knight into a 5 power Oko that also has, you know, Icefang mana up can be pretty awkward. So being able to deal with permanents like Planeswalkers without having to go to your combat step is really nice. Another Preordain. Okay. So we've seen 1 top, 1 bottom. Okay. 1 top, 1 bottom. And then Ponder. Wow. Okay. I'm still putting myself on just the best draw being probably either Thalia or Wasteland. Opponent chose not to shuffle with the Ponder, which is interesting. Hey, Lurin, welcome. Yeah, really strong ant vibes. I mean, Preordained Ponder, Preordained Ponder is pretty scary. So I'm definitely ticking up the Hex Drinker. I think I'm then just either playing the Engineer or holding up Swords to Plowshares. There is a line where I can just get my opponent by making them storm me to 20 and then swordsing my own creature to actually survive it. Yeah, I was actually listening to I went for a walk before, and the Eternal Glory podcast was on, and it was, yeah, really good. I really liked it. Big fan of those guys. I may have something coming out on Feb 3rd with Brian Koval and Phil Gallagher, but you didn't hear it from me. Definitely check out Brian Koval's YouTube channel for that. Gain 4 life from Night. That's also pretty interesting because it does make the storm count an extra 2. I guess I would have to fetch anyway, but being just 1 mana, it doesn't really matter there. I think I will definitely attack, putting them down to 10. And then if I play the Catacombs, I can have lethal next turn. You would put in a 4/3. I guess if we put them to 10 and we play the fetch, we would then have 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we're pretty close to just having lethal by even wastelanding ourselves, but of course that means we can't wasteland our opponent, so I'm going to use this now. I'm going to take them off black just because of ritual effects. I'll play the Catacombs, and I'm just going to pass here. I think what I will do is tick up this, and then we can grab Scrubland to cast Swords if needed. Let me just double check that we actually have a Scrubland in the deck. Scrubland is here. Cool. I don't think it's Sneak. I guess it could be Sneaker Show still, but they did show Underground Sea, so that definitely puts me off just classic Sneak and Show. And I don't think there's any versions running around with a black splash. If anything, it's blue-white that's all the rage right now with Omnitel. My opponent also might think we're just holding up Dried Arbor here as an extra attacker, because that also makes it close to lethal. I guess it makes it lethal now with the Misties, so opponent has to go off here. Cabal? Okay. Infernal Tutor. Okay. Another Cabal. Pedal. Sure. Cabal. I sadly am not playing Bajuka Bog. I'm not a massive fan of Bog, but if I was, that's definitely a line to keep up as well. I think if I was playing an Elvish Reclaimer build, I'd definitely think of Bajuka Bog because you can get it out as early as turn 2. But because of the ley lines in the board, I think that's a little bit better. And just because the Bog coming in tapped can be relevant. They're going to Thoughtseize me now, that's interesting. I guess I just have to Swords and hope that they can't get there. The funny thing is that the Swords actually adds to Storm. And even if they go for a empty line, they can't block the Hex Drinker next turn. Yeah, I guess the swords gains me 3 life, which is still pretty tough, because the swords will add to Storm, dealing an extra 2. So, like, yeah, if swords isn't the play, if they take the swords, they're currently at 6 Storm with 2 cards in hand. It kind of has to be... I guess it could be with 8 mana in hand. It could just be a Past in Flames. Yeah, I don't think the swords line even does it. Because even if I swords and put them to 22, I think they have enough resources to just get above that anyway. Oh. Oh, they thought seize themselves. Okay. Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I should have picked up on that, because now I gave away that I have swords. A little too slow. But at least we have some pretty good sideboard hate. I guess I could have conceded to not show that I'm on the black source on Plague Engineer, but I think because you saw the Scrubland, they would assume that Plague Engineer is in the 75. We have Deafening Silence and Canonist. We have Gaddock Teeg and Plague. I'm pretty happy to take out the Swords, the Skyclaves, the Decays. Thalia is fine, Oof is fine, Skoos is fine. Hexdrink is fine as a early aggressive creature. Beast is interesting. I don't really care about anything like Defense Grid because we're not playing Mindbreak Trap, which is nice. Yeah, Plague's mainly for Empty the Warrens, because otherwise Maverick doesn't have a great out to it. I don't think Leyline is worth it just to hit Cabal and Past. Hey Yihui, welcome. Yeah, Leyline's always an interesting one because it only hits Cabal and Past in Flames. Which, you know, are definitely 2 key cards, but I don't want to drop too many threats from my deck, so I don't have a way to get there. Yeah, Kaya eating the bin is pretty nice as well. It might just be Kaya. Even though it's a 4-drop against an Ant deck, I think we bring in enough speed bumps for us to actually progress into the later game. Yeah. I wouldn't say that Kaya is a great play, but just because we have the extra slot, I don't mind it. This hand is definitely interesting. The rough part is that it's only 1 Hate Bear. I'd much rather keep... I guess Skoos in a way is interaction, but otherwise it's pretty tough. It's a pretty aggressive hand, though. I really like turn 1 Bird because it turns on Green Suns next turn to go get either Gaddock Teeg or Collector Oof. But yeah, the issue is that we brought in like Deafening Silence, like another Green Suns would be fantastic. Scavenging Ooze and Hold Up isn't. Yeah, I'm gonna see how it goes. I can kind of count the Scavenging Ooze as a second bear, so. Yeah. Maybe there's even a consideration that one leyline is better than the Kaya, because at least if it's in your opening hand, fantastic. But if it's not, you can still cast it down the line. I have seen some Ant decks playing Karakas in the board, which is really hard, because even the Mother of Runes versions of Maverick have a hard time beating that. A little subtlety in this hand as well is that I don't have a Plains, which means that my opponent can't cast a Massacre for free, which is kind of nice. So there's definitely some thought that if I do draw into a Plains, I just won't play it and try to play off the mana that I have to cast the spells that I have. The reason I went with 2-1 Bird over Hexdrinker is that it allows me to either play turn 2 collect a Gaddock Teeg off Green Suns, or play the Ooze with a mana up. Kai is pretty nice, but I don't think it's doing what I want it to do right now. I'm going to play as just Scavenging Ooze with mana up and pass. I could play the Hex to get super aggressive. I feel like my opponent isn't going to win next turn. I don't think I have to hold up mana here just for a Past in Flames line. I'm pretty happy getting mana on the, or getting Hexdrinker on the board, because I definitely have to be the beatdown here. But a little bit tough. Tick up Kaya is interesting because it might keep my opponent off something like Cabal Ritual from Threshold, but the sooner the Hexdrinker can play, the better. Okay. This is fine. 2 cards to the bottom. Oh, Thalia is a perfect draw. So here I have the option of holding up Thalia Bounce or holding up Scavenging Ooze. And I think the better is just holding up the Scoos, because I'm currently not scared of Massacre, and I don't think they would have brought in something like Pyroclasm. I guess Pyroclasm's the one card that would be a little bit rough. Yeah, the issue is that if I want to play the Thalia and hold up Karakas, it doesn't produce green for Ooze. Or I can tap out with Karakas and then hold up Bird. I think Thalia hold up Karakas is better here, because I think Thalia is going to add enough pressure to the board and also disruption that Screws isn't going to have to be online next turn. So I think that Thalia Karakas is fine. Feels like Pyroclasm. Oh, Cabal. Okay. Interesting. Maybe they're wanting to hard cast a Massacre? LED? Okay. Or maybe they're just going to combo through Thalia. Rough. Damn, hopefully it isn't a Past in Flames line. It kind of has to be because Empty doesn't get there because we have the Hex Drinker which gets protection. Maybe there's a world? Yeah, okay, good. Luckily. I think my reasoning is sound, leaving up the Karakas instead of a green source because I feel that Thalia is going to be buying enough time that Scavenging Ooze isn't relevant for their turn. And holding up the Thalia is because if they have some sort of sweeper like Pyroclasm, I at least get to save it and redeploy it next turn. I don't mind chat's thoughts on Leyline. I don't mind this switch. There's probably even some consideration to trimming one of these as well for a Leyline. I would definitely say Ramanap and Tireless are two cards that if they're doing what I want them to do, then I'm probably in a position of winning that game anyway. You play Leyline over Plague? The issue is that historically I found a lot of AMP players try to go early on an empty for 8 and try to win over 3 turns. I'm going to go a little bit into the Leyline plan. The issue is that it can just be a dead draw if we draw it, but... yeah. The issue is that we have a lot of speed bumps, but they have obviously the answers to get through them, so it's a case of not just getting a Thalia in play, it's getting Thalia and Teeg, or Collector Oof and Leyline. Yeah, Knight of Autumn's an interesting one. There are some times where my opponent might play out their Lotus Petals or LEDs a turn early to play around Thalia, and then you can nab them with a Knight. But I don't think that this is probably that sort of matchup. It might just be the 4th Leyline to really increase that percentage of being in my opening hand. We'll see how this slides. Yeah, being able to turn off Piff from the get-go is really nice. Okay, well... this is an interesting hand, because I don't actually have the mana to really do anything. I do have land drops, which is nice. And I do have both Canonist and also Green Suns for Gaddock Teeg or Collector Oof if I draw into another land, because I can go Dried Arbor and then Wasteland. I feel this is good enough, because even if I miss 2 land drops, I can hopefully Green Suns for Birds of Paradise. If I really need the mana. My opponent kept 7. I think if this was a Multi 5, I'll definitely keep it, which kind of is with the ley lines. Yeah, Warren's is pretty tough. I'm going to keep this. I'm going to see how it goes. There is a question to play only 1 ley line, but usually, like for Echoing Truth, but I think just playing the second is worth it. Especially if they have like Chain of Vapor instead of Echoing Truth. But it could be a trap hand. It's never easy to know. See what the Ponder does. There's a thought that if I draw a land, I just want to wasteland my opponent. But they chose not to shuffle, so they're obviously not looking for one thing. I feel like it's just Dryad Arbor pass. Yeah, I think putting my opponent back a turn with Wasteland is less important than getting this Canonist down. I think it's just going to be Dryad Arbor pass. It's a little bit rough if they have removal for the Dryad Arbor. I guess I can just go Scrubland pass. Yeah. I have seen Aurim's Chant in some decks, so maybe my opponent thinks we're just holding up Aurim's Chant, which isn't a great bluff, but yeah, I guess the discard is tough because it means that next turn I'll have to play the Dryad Arbor to make sure I have 3 mana on turn 3, if we get a turn 3 for Green Suns for 2. See what they take. Probably the Canonist, because it can come down next turn. I don't think they care about the Kaya or the Green Suns here because it is a few turns away. Has 5 cards. Storm is 1. They take the Green Suns. Interesting. That definitely makes me think they have an answer for the Canonist, or they just are going to try to go off this turn with some sort of empty plan and think the Green Suns can get me closer to an answer for empty. Or scared of Oof? Yeah, that's very true. Oof or Teeg. Interesting. Still going to play it. If they have a bounce spell, they have a bounce spell. Okay. Petals are free. Oh, that's pretty big. Unfortunately, I can't cast it. So that's a pretty big downside of not playing the Dryad Arbor turn 1, which I just really thought about disruption on the Dryad Arbor. Oh, nothing from my opponent. That's interesting. So they played the Lotus Petal. Yeah, I have seen Fatal Push as well. They're going for a blue card here. Is it a bounce spell or is it a cantrip? It is a bounce spell. There was definitely a thought that I should have gone for Wasteland early on the Volk, but... Hey Martin, welcome. Hope you're well. Chain of Vapor on these. That's pretty good. I'm just going to Wasteland my opponent. I should have done this in upkeep. I guess they could have just used Chain anyway, but... This could just be an empty? It is an empty, okay. Rough. Okay. So we can play the knight out. I think the knight is best here. It means that next turn at least we can 2-spell. Yeah, should have definitely wasted early on. Sometimes that happens with chat. Apologies. Tabernacle is not in the deck, but Plague Engineer kind of works on the same axis, which is nice. And I mean, if they don't have an answer for the knight here, they swing for 7. We go to 11. We get to untap. If we draw a land, we get to play 2 2/2s, which are also great against this deck, which means that 2 more goblins don't get through. So I'm not sure if 8 goblins by itself is going to get there. Ponder shows to shuffle, which is great. They have a land and 1 card. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We'll block 1. Do we draw a land? A land would be perfect. Hex Drinker. Not the worst. Oh, okay, we can actually get Cradle here as well. Cradle produces green. So what if we do... I guess we have to do... I don't think we can do it because of the double... We need a second white. We can't just rely on the hex. I guess I can play Canonist and then tick up Knight. Interesting one. So the Canonist obviously makes everything slower, so I have to do Canonist last. Yeah, I think what I can do is just Canonist and Hex Drinker, and maybe that's fine. Hey Giffy, thank you. I think it's just going to be, yeah, Hex Drinker first, and then play Canonist. Sack Savannah for Cradle, and then just tick up on Hex. Which might even put my opponent in a position where they have to keep back a Goblin so that Knight and Hex Drinker and Canonist can't just attack for the win. I don't think I could have played Teeg because I needed the extra mana. Yeah, I guess I could. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I could play Teeg and then sack the Knight, which would allow me to tap that for... yeah. I guess it means that the Hex Drinker wouldn't be a 4/4, but... Library. I mean, surely here we just tick up Cradle. Play Teeg. Hopefully Matsol. Yeah, I think we just tick up the Hex Drinkage for 6/6 and then attack for lethal. We didn't actually have lethal. 6. Yeah, we were 1 off lethal. Interesting. I guess my opponent just didn't think they had a way out of it, so... The play was actually not to play the Teeg, because I needed the Dried Upper to attack. Which... Good to get that out of the way. Good to get the rust out of the hands. But, yeah, some interesting decisions there. Some that I'll definitely go back on, because I could have played out all my 4 creatures, or 3 creatures, and not ticked up the Hex Drinker, which actually wasn't the worst, because the mana that I lost there would have been made up by Cradle thanks to the other creature, and I could have blocked with the Canonist and Teeg instead of just Hex Drinker and Canonist. So definitely a misplay, but thankfully it worked out. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Because, yeah, the Cradle would have made 4 mana with 3 left over. I think I would have been 1 short. No, because I put 4... Yeah, okay. Yep. Yes, correct. Nice to get out. Nice to get out of it. Leyline's interesting. I felt like Leyline there did slow them down enough, but obviously against the empty plan it can be a little bit rough if they can pivot quickly to it. Yeah, that's definitely true. The Turn 1 Arbor would have done a lot there because it would have also stopped the empty. I wonder if my opponent would have had a turn earlier if they took the Canonist instead of the Green Suns at the start. Yeah, thankfully the misplays just didn't lead to a loss, which is always pretty nice. Yeah, that's very true as well. I guess because then I knew about the Chain of Vapor. I guess in a perfect world I would have wastelanded anyway in my turn to try to stop them because they were tapped out, I believe. But yeah, definitely a lot of different avenues to victory, which is kind of nice. Always something to work on. I wonder if Tom's got no, he hasn't got a trophy yet. Okay, what about Pokepile? Nice, okay. Yeah, exactly. It's a weird feeling when you're actually looking for Storm matchups instead of the Oko and Dreadhorde decks, because they are a little bit tougher. Sorry, a little bit tougher to face. Thankfully, Skyclave Apparition gives you a few more outs, which is pretty nice, but you really need them. Yeah, I hope that there's some changes. Obviously, Maverick doesn't have a great way to keep up with the value that some of those new cards print, but there's been a lot of really cool innovations from different players, and still some pretty good finishes as well in 2020. What's Legacy doing in Melbourne right now? I know that Jack was trying to get Paper Magic or Paper Legacy going again, which is very cool. Up against Soul. Just a 1-lander with Wasteland, so I'm going to mulligan this. Last team playing 5-color Loam, very cool. Haven't seen any Loam in the past few months, so if we're playing against Loam, I'd be very happy to play against Loam. Okay. Pretty happy to keep this and bottom the Dryad Arbor. If my opponent is on Loam, I do want to fetch first. Probably just getting a basic. I could see myself getting a Bayou to make sure I have access to black, even in the face of a Wasteland. That's cool to hear. Melbourne's got a pretty good scene. It is going to be Loam. Interesting. I think like Duck Confidant would be pretty rough to see straight up. Chalice is annoying, but not the worst. Sylvan Library is also pretty good. Kaya, okay. Well, that makes me... I kind of just want to go for a basic here. I do have mana sources for days, but I like just getting my mana going as soon as possible. One, two, three, four. They didn't get a card. Interesting. Knight's fine. I think just playing my own knight here is better than Kaya. Kaya tick down on Mox Diamond is interesting, but could also knight tick up on the lands. That's actually interesting because it also makes the knight smaller. Kaya tick up is going to be my play because it also turns off Loam, which is kind of nice. Yeah, it's definitely the more risky, but we can hope it does enough. Are we playing any new cards? I guess Skyclave Apparition is probably the newest. And then Plague Engineer is in there. Shifting Ceratops. Fetch is fine. Trop. Oko? Leovold. Okay. Now they're probably going to Wasteland me. Bayou. Maybe Abrupt Decay? Okay. We know the Bazooka Bog is out of the way, which is nice, so it can't be grabbed with Knight. Sylvan Library here, really nice, because my opponent was down to 2 cards when they played it. Just going to 10. Okay. At least here we have some pretty good draws. In like Scavenging Ooze would be pretty fantastic. I think Green Suns is probably just my best draw. Another Decay? Rough. I think I probably just see what they have and then just concede my upkeep. I don't think I'm coming back from this game. I kept a pretty mana heavy hand and just didn't want to draw into extra mana. Hey, House of Mana. I see you are also a fan of mana. Opponent didn't use the knight, which is interesting. They didn't attack. I guess a Scoos could just change it here. Skyclave is also interesting. I think Skyclave is best to take out the Sylvan Library and not the Knight. Hey Xardian. Legacy is in an interesting spot. I think Library's just too good here. It will draw them a card of the Leovold. Maze is fine. It's good that we've played against two decks that haven't seen too much play over recent times. So they get to do the maze trick here where they get to untap Knight at the end of combat. Pretty happy just taking this. I really just don't want to give them cards. And thankfully, Leo isn't an issue right now. I think Uro is the big issue, and I didn't want to lose the Caracas tonight without having an answer to the Uro. One turn too late. Yeah, interesting spot. I guess we can attack with the Skyclave, but then they have some shenanigans with Knight. Can attack return. Because the Skyclave isn't going to be doing much. Yeah, I'm going to attack, and then with the Exalted Trigger on the stack, I can return Uro. They do draw a card. There's probably a world where I should have eaten the Knight there to play around Punishing Fire. Hoko's pretty good. Yeah, now there's that Punishing Fire. I don't have a great way to play around that. Oh wait, can't I just eat the same knight? Surely. Yeah, thank you. I don't know how I missed that. Okay. That's a lot better. I do have to look out for an attack that just is a lethal knight and food. I guess they also have maze. They can actually just maze here. Yikes. They can also trade the food here because I can't grow this in any way. Wasteland's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't give me Chalice. Screws are their own. Leavold really good here, because usually the Sylvan Library would be a pretty nice draw, but obviously just drawing one card here. I guess I could draw into a removal spell and then kill it, but it's just game. We can definitely take out the Thalias. Oof is an interesting one. I don't think it's worth it just because of the Moxes. I don't think they'll be on Bob, but I don't mind Plague Engineer as just a creature that they have to deal with before attacking. I do like the extra Skyclave. I do like the Nissa and the Kaya. I don't mind some number of ley lines. I still like Kaya because it deals with Mox Diamond, Chalice, food tokens. Might just be like one Plague, one Kaya. Beast is also interesting, but I think it's worth it because of the haste. And also doesn't the maze can't actually prevent the damage from questing Beast, which is pretty relevant. It could just be the extra ley line. Just having 3 ley lines is fine. Rough hand. One land but no green source. One land but wasteland. Alright. Bottom, and probably bottom the knight and keep the Skyclave. Opponent, I did not mulligan to that. Wasteland's interesting. I might even wasteland them in their upkeep. They could have crop rotation, but Traditionally, Loam isn't playing crop. That's more than fine. Forest is kind of nice. I don't mind keeping the wasteland for another dual land. I could waste again, but I like trying to wasteland on some, like, a green source perhaps, like a grove. So Bob is actually fine here, because then we get to Skyclave the Bob, which is nice. I'm not playing any Caledame cards yet. I'm just going to go for Savannah Canopy and hold these two. I don't want them wastelanding my wasteland, and I don't want them wastelanding a black source that I have. But yeah, I'm not too sure if there's any new cards from the new set that are going to be worth playing. I assume there are some pretty cool cards, but I haven't seen any yet that have really, yeah, given me a reason to look. I like taking them off the grove here. And just passing. Yeah. I didn't want to crack the canopy there, because if I draw into a knight, I want to be able to play it. Wrong knight, but I still think this is a fine play. I'll go for a scrubland, because it means I can cast black and also double white. That's fine. Sylvan Library is a big card that I want. Oh, Kaya can also take out the illusion, which is kind of cool. I don't mind drawing here. Okay. Well, now I don't mind going for Hex Drinker, because it means that next turn I could maybe tick it up potentially. At least if I draw a white source here, I can also take them off the Mox Diamond. Wasteland. Alright. I think it is the Caracas, because it takes them off the ability to play a knight next turn. But I could just die to this illusion, let's be fair. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. The funny thing is even if I get this Skyclave into play... Oh no. Oh no. They'll get a 2/2 if they kill the apparition. Library's pretty good, especially at 20 life. Now I have to take out the library if I draw a land here. Ugh. A library of my own? Yikes. Decay's pretty good. Oof. I just have to take it to the library here. I don't really have an option. I probably just want to block here. Having a creature doesn't do too much for me. I don't have any equipment or anything to run into. I guess it turns off the cradle, but I have bigger issues here. The mulls were really tough, especially because the ley line didn't do a whole lot. Yeah, I can get Dried Arbor, but then like they can apparate. Yeah, I guess like an apparition gets there, but it's pretty tough. Rough. Definitely a matchup where I want to see my mana accelerant early on. Or at least a hand with 2 basics. Yeah, exactly. That's just Magic sometimes, unfortunately. But, yeah. I think overall Maverick has a pretty nice matchup against Loam. If you can hit their mana early on, their mana is pretty poor. So if you can try to hit their Mox Diamonds early, and maybe wasteland them a bit off their other deck, off their dual lands, it can be a little bit rough when they're running cards like Karakas or Barrenmoor. Rough. I'm not sure where the Bayou came from, and if there was a point where I could have gone for Savannah to just have the one white source, or the 2 white sources with 1 black source, so I could actually cast the Skyclave. But maybe the Bayou came in early. Tough. Loam a cool deck though. Punishing Fire not in a great spot, and it's probably why that a lot of Loam players have moved away from the deck. Especially when your main removal spell can't hit Dreadhorde Arcanist or Elks. It's pretty tough. So you really need to make sure you get Grove online, or else you're going to have a pretty tough time against a lot of the format right now. There's a lot of Dreadhorde around, there's a lot of Oko around. I guess the deck is playing its own Okos, so that's kind of a way out of both, but pretty tough. Jimmy MTG, where are you from? Do you play Legacy? Or if not, what formats do you play? And what formats does your local area support? If you're still in chat. Rough. Plague would have been interesting there as well, because you can name Illusion, and it would have been a 1/1 against the 2/2. Yeah, I'd definitely love to see a change up for the current metagame, and maybe see a more friendly metagame for Punishing Fire. Pauper's pretty sweet. Pauper's really cool. I'll keep this. It's a little bit fair, but it does have a lot of mana acceleration, which is nice. Which means that like an early Green Suns can turn into something pretty big pretty early on. Hey Arnie. Oof. Is this just going to be burn? Chromox. Okay, it's going to be mono red prison. The first one was Ant, which we got up. A few misplays, but thankfully we got there. And then just 4-color Loam, which was a little bit rough. Oh, this could also be just a lackey. Okay. Well, now they're down to 2 cards, so I think the play here is just to hold up Dried Arbor. You're from Sweden, play Legacy and Modern. You have Snowco, Hogat, and UF Delver? Is that Blue-Red Delver? Very cool decks. I like that mix. And thanks for the follow, by the way. What's this going to be? Chieftain. Oh, the one card I just can't beat here. I mean, they only have 1 card left. Is there a world where I just don't block and then cast a Thalia next turn, which has at least first strike? If it's Muxus, I just lose, so I think I just have to keep blocking with creatures until I can just deploy more than 1. Blue-red's cool. Nice. At least, like, Source to Plashes is a massive draw here. Neg. At least this buys me time. Your legacy scene has grown in your hometown? Very cool. That is very cool to hear. Matron's pretty good. They have 0 cards in hand, which is interesting. I wonder if they just get a ringleader. Muxus. I guess if they get a land off the top, it's just, yeah. Rough. I mean, Swords doesn't really do anything now because they have the mana for it. I mean, I can hope they just don't draw a land here. Yikes. Just, not my league. Skyclave, Plague, Thalias can come out. I don't mind the oofs because of Chrome Mox. Ceratops is interesting. It might just be the Planeswalkers. We're on the play, which is nice. I don't think I want to rely on First Strike Thalia just because of what she taxes otherwise. I'm gonna keep this because of the Plague. We also just have a nice curve, which is kind of nice. I can also go basic planes into Scavenging Ooze, which is nice. Alright, you got it. Decay is actually pretty nice as well. I think I'd rather just hold up Decay. Because if the Scavenging Ooze gets answered, I got nothing. And if they just put in like a Muxus, then I'm just gone. Goblins can be a hard matchup because it can go wide. So I think actually being on the black splash gives me a huge advantage because of that. Because if you're just in green-white, you have 4 swords as answers for Lackey. And then you have to rely on something like Skyclave Apparition, perhaps. Which could be, yeah, pretty tough. You know, you could have like a 10-10 Knight against Goblins, but they might have like, you know, 8 Goblins that they can just attack with for 3 turns and get there. I think here I like just playing the Knight. I could also play the Ooze. Both have similarities. The Knight's nice because I can start turning on Wasteland if I really want to. Especially if my opponent next turn goes Ancient Tomb into 4-drop. I'll also make the Knight a 4-4. I'll get a Bayou to make sure they can't Wasteland me off 1 black source as well. But yeah, Goblins can be pretty tricky. You really need to make sure you have a turn 1 answer for Lackey. And then you just got to make sure that you have ways to get in damage while also being prepared for what's coming otherwise. Krenko is going to be fine. Wasteland's actually pretty solid here because I get to Wasteland and then Caracas the Krenko. I'm gonna sack the Bio because I don't want the white source, but Caracas is a white source, so should have thought about that more. Although my opponent has 7 cards, I definitely feel like we have a mana advantage here. And especially them not having another Ancient Tomb there makes it a little bit tougher for my opponent. And although they have an answer for Plague, which I could have actually been a little bit more... I could be more patient with. I think this is going to be okay. I also don't mind... I guess I could play around Bolt here by holding up Cradle, and I think I might. So I'm actually just going to do this now. No. Just in case they have some weird way of turning on haste. And also, Chrome Moxes. So some way to put out a haste creature and like a Lackey or 2. War Chief is fine. So what I can do here is eat their Lackey and hope that they respond to me eating with a Bolt. Okay, this is going to allow it. Interesting. I'll untap first and see what we draw. Okay. Just too much. I actually don't mind the Canonists are an interesting choice, and I don't think it's where I actually want to be. But the Skirk Prospector lines that the deck can have really makes me want to have a Canonist and just go lower to the ground, but maybe that's not where I want to be. Which is weird. I mean, in some ways, Goblins is a deck that does try to churn out multiple spells in a turn to make sure they can go wide early on. It might just be the first strike, which isn't great. I'm not sure if their version runs Caracas. I assume it does because it allows you to put in Muxus off Lackey and then return it to your hand, attack with Lackey, put it in, get more value. So that's definitely something to consider. I think it's just going to be the Canonists, honestly. Mainly because they're just a 2/2 for 2. Not so much for the ability, but the ability is a little bit relevant. I do want a Swords to Plowshares opener though. That's the big one. I think last turn I could have been more patient as well with the Plague Engineer and actually played it out to at least take out a Goblin off my opponent. Aye. Mana again. I mean, it's a sweet hand if we draw into like a fetch land, but I can't. A deck like Goblins that can pressure you from so early on, I just have to mulligan this, unfortunately. Oh. Yeah, it's very true. Canonist being an artifact creature is a little bit easier for them to deal with as well. I can't keep that. Okay. My opponent did mulligan to 6. City of Traders. Oh, is this just like a turn 1 Chalice? No, okay. Chrome Mox. I guess Blood Moon does it pretty well as well. What do you got? Pashulik Mons. Yep. Savannah into Bird. I think my best draw is probably Caracas, because I can maybe turn off the Chrome Mox with a Collector Oof and then return the Pashulik Mons with Caracas. The 5 isn't too bad because the Ramanap allows me to come back a little bit. War Chief's not the worst because we can take it out with the Skyclave, which is nice. Yeah, okay. We'll take this. We'll get a Scrubland here, and then Skyclave the War Chief. They only have 1 card left as well. Yeah, definitely a more all-in approach from my opponent, but it wasn't an all-in approach on Lackey or Warren Instigator, which is interesting. Hey La Best, hope you're well. Thanks for the follow. Let me know where you're from. If you play Legacy, what do you play in Legacy? Oh, just a pass, wow. Planes, okay. That means we can go both Sylvan Library and Collector Oof, which is pretty huge. I guess they could float red here. And then bolt something. Nope. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Wasteland off the top would be really nice, especially with Ramanap in play as well. Will they attack? Sylvan Library is also an interesting card because it is something you have to be a little bit mindful against with Goblins and how fast they can apply pressure in damage to your life total. There's Wasteland, that's pretty good. Put on top. Put on top. Hit Cavern. I'm just going to attack with the Skyclave Apparition, because if they have Bolt, and we attack with both, they could Bolt the Skyclave, get a 3/3, and then Bolt the Collect, and then block the Collector Oof. Which would be pretty huge, because then they also deal 1 to the Birds of Paradise. Mountain's pretty good. Can't be wastelanded, but they just see the lock and don't think they can get through it, so that's a nice way to get back on the winning line. Real shame against Loam. Those matches are usually really interesting, especially when they grind away. But just wasn't my day. Yeah, Goblins I feel a lot safer against with Plague Engineer in the deck and also Abrupt Decay. Thanks, Jimmy. All the best. Enjoy your work and enjoy your weekend ahead. But yeah, the extra removal that you get, especially even something like a turn 2 Kaya on the play, allows you to deal with both Chalice, Goblin Lackey, or Chrome Mox, or Aether Vial. So against all versions of these hands. Goblins, it's pretty good. Okay. I guess we keep and bottom the second Skyclave. And then just go Windswept into Bayou into Birds, because then we can cast the Abrupt Decay if I really need to. Will we see a snow basic? We haven't seen one yet. Ancient Tomb, okay. Mox, okay. Lotus Petal, it's gonna be Urza. Okay. I think here I actually just want to take out the Lotus Petal because it kind of turns off the Mox Diamond as well. But is that really getting anywhere? That's the question. Yeah, I don't mind this. They don't usually have anything at instant speed anyway, so taking out the Mox here doesn't seem too bad. And then I'm just going to play the Hex Drinker out to have some sort of pressure on the board. Underground Sea. But nothing. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna play Hierarch. Oh, I tapped wrong. I tapped wrong. I was supposed to hold up the swords. Oh, I was supposed to hold up the Birds of Paradise because then I can hold up Swords to Plowshares for Urza. Oh, no. Oh, this is... I am livid. I am livid with myself. That is a horrible play. That is a horrible play. Hexdrinker has been fantastic. In the matches where it's really countered, I've really enjoyed Hexdrinker in the deck. Please, please don't play like an Urza this turn, so the swords being on offline is a thing. Please be a Khan. Oh, it's an Urza. Please just be an Urza. Hexdrinker is really good with Cradle. Oh, hey Cal. Welcome. Hope you're well. Okay, this isn't too bad. Okay. I think I want to just swords the Urza, because then we can keep the Skyclave for something like Khan. I'm not sure if the black is maybe for sideboard cards. Luckily here, the Hexdrinker with Exalted is going to be bigger than this Construct. But yeah, Hexdrinker has been amazing in the Cradle decks, because you actually have the ability to turn it into a 4/4 on turn 2. If you go turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 play Hexdrinker, play Cradle, you then have access to 3 mana. Which is pretty cool. My opponent still has 4 cards in hand and access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. I guess like a main deck Engineered Explosives would be pretty diabolical here, taking out a lot of things. They could also empty their hand and play Echo. Another Urza is pretty good. They have 2 cards left. Do they have the Echo? Or maybe they go for the shuffle. Interesting. It looks like they're going for the shuffle effect. Ancient Tomb. Nice. Nice. Okay. We're Gucci. 5. Yeah, this is still okay. I definitely want to get rid of the Urza. Five, 6, 7. Yeah, it's not going to level up this turn anyway, so I might as well play the Hexdrinker, play out the Sylvan Library here. It's a pretty nice last card to have. I definitely have to make sure I just don't lose to these constructs, because every artifact they play, they get an extra 2 damage in. Oh, Inventor's Fair. Four mana sack? Okay. That's not too bad, because they currently can't use both their Ancient Tombs. They can only use 1. So they have access to 4 here. And then I guess they could sack LED as well for 3 mana with the ability on the stack, and then go get what they get. So they get 5 mana in total. Yeah, they're going to use it. Okay. Interesting. No guts, no glory. What can they get? What are they getting here? If they're getting an artifact. I don't think they'll play like a main deck Ensnaring Bridge. What are they getting? Come on, chat. What are they getting? Artifact. Is it like a Strix? But that doesn't beat the Hex Drinker. Thopter Foundry. Interesting. Still doesn't beat the Hex Drinker. That's fine. 2 mana left, but nothing in hand. I think thankfully Hex Drinker here just gets us there. We do also have, I guess we did have the bird in the air with another exalted creature until they played the Thopter Foundry because it creates a creature with flying. But that was a nice one. This is where I want really Deafening Silence, definitely. Ley Lines are fine because it turns off Emery and the Echo Lines. Gaddock Teeg is great. The Plagues, meh, unless they're playing Psy. I don't mind dropping out the Tracker. The Ramanap is a little bit too win more in this matchup. Skyclaves are great. Kaya probably is okay. Deals with a lot of artifacts. Deals with the Urza tokens. Knight of Autumn, fine. Questing Beast, interesting. I do think I want all the swords. Decay is still relevant against Library. I think it might be the Sylvan Libraries, just because of the Narsets most likely and the Hull Breaches most likely. It might just be like one sword and one Hierarch. Just a little trim. Leyline or Deafening Silence would be great. I'll take both if I get it. But Leyline, pretty nice because it does slow down some of their really explosive draws. Of like, play everything out, LED, Echo, new hand. And we get it with a Wasteland. So again, the mana here just really not working out. But I don't think it's that bad. It's 23, 22 if you take away the Cradle, which, you know, with the 5 mana accelerant isn't the worst. This is an interesting one, chat. I need some help here. Mull? Yeah. It just relies on that land so much. I think this is a bit of a trap hand where, of course, Leyline is okay, but you then get trapped with a hand that doesn't really do anything, so... This is better. I'll keep this. And I'm going to drop... Probably the Green Suns. I like the Gaddock Teeg. I like that we have a lot of answers here. I think because we already have the Gaddock Teeg, I don't really need the Green Suns, but Green Suns for Collector Oof is actually pretty nice. But I think because I'll be playing the Teeg before I play the Green Suns, it's a little bit tough. Yeah, Leyline's definitely just a speed bump, unfortunately. Of course. Here, I'm pretty happy just to Wasteland because it kind of takes them off 2 mana, as it also turns off the Mox Opal. Oh, it doesn't because of the Chalice. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me, because we could have played a land there just to play the Teeg next turn. They have the Tomb. Could have Chalice checked. Sadly, the chalice automatically triggers, so it's not up to my opponent to do anything on MTGO. Nusset's pretty strong. What do they find? I do want to keep the swords in case we draw into a Abrupt Decay, and then we could play Teeg, untap, play the third land, Abrupt Decay, and swords in the same turn. They're playing Tezzeret? Wow. Okay, well that's nice, because we do have the Teeg to answer it. Yeah, Tez is very interesting. LED. Okay. There's LED, that's fine. At least they can't flash back the Echo of Eons with Gaddock Teeg in hand. Or in play. Plague Engineer is actually not too bad. It's not going to kill Teeg, which is nice. So I assume its name is human. Minotaur? Kithkin. Okay, interesting. I guess it means I can't block the Urza. I would have actually played that post-combat because I probably would have blocked the Urza. Now I obviously won't, but... Interesting. Another ley line. Definitely the sore part of bringing it in. This is actually a tough point because I'm not sure if I want to take out the... I guess I can take out the Chalice. And then Swords next turn. That's probably better than taking out the Urza, because if they destroy the... Yeah, I just like turning on the sword. It makes my hand a little bit better. I think my best draw is probably Kaya, because it can deal with the construct. Another Urza. Pretty good. Emery. Disruptive Foundry. Chalice. Force. I'm probably happy blocking the Plague Engineer here. They get a 0/0, which just they don't get anything. Maverick is pretty tough against Snoko. It's not the greatest. If you try to play it out with just like one card at a time, then they just have really good removal. And if you go all in, then Dead of Winter usually gets you. It has a really hard time beating Oko and Uro at times, and Ice Vanquaddle is obviously a really good card against the creature-based deck. It's a pretty big uphill battle. But there are ways you can tweak your deck to be better against Snow. You can play some Planeswalkers in the 75. You can play more cards that are kind of 2-for-1s, like Knight of Autumn or Plague Engineer. Abrupt Decay is pretty solid. Oh, Jewels have gone, bro? Interesting. I think I'll just run this back. The extra Skyclave is actually pretty tempting. I'm not sure if I want to be on the Leyline plan. But I'm not sure if there's anything better. I kind of want the extra swords, even though they are playing. It could just be something like 2 Leylines, because if I draw it, it's still fine. Trop is 110. Far out. Tropical Island. Wow. Haha. Classic. I think I'm okay with just this. Kai is pretty interesting. No, we'll see how this plays out. This hand actually isn't the worst. It just doesn't have white mana, which is kind of the league in a nutshell. Tough. Still no white mana. Okay. Keep. I definitely want the 3 lands and the bird. I think it might just be Swords and Decay that I drop here, because I have a turn 2 Kaya and then a Skyclave the following turn, and those things answer pretty much everything that Swords and Abrupt Decay do, but also stick around. Hey Jack, I saw you were getting the troops together for Paper Legacy again in Melbourne, which is very cool. Tomb. Pedal. Pedal. Chalice is fine. Is this like... okay. I think I just like Kaya take out the Chalice. Haha, you do. There's also a thought to go after their mana instead of go after the Chalice, but I've gone after the Chalice. I kind of want them to play a 4-drop so the Skyclave can come down and hopefully take over the game. Okay. I mean, this is pretty good if they have nothing else, because I get to go Skyclave on Urza and then tick down on the Construct. Baleful Strix. Okay. Decay. I still think it's just Skyclave on Urza. Tick down on Construct. A few options. I'm definitely getting rid of the Construct. And then I'm just losing the Kai to the bird, but I think that's okay. These numbers are crazy. It's like something happened where people just have a lot of money at the moment. It's really weird. I haven't heard of anything. I think our best draw is just Green Suns for Collector Oof because it turns off the seats. Why use a middleman? Why use a middleman where you can just cast the Collector Oof? Breacher is okay. That makes me definitely not want to attack here, so not too unhappy about that. Trying to say that without smiling is, yeah, pretty tough. Oof's going to be a tough one. I'm not sure if they're running Dismember or some sort of bounce spell. I guess they could have just hardcast Khan here. They're going to get aggressive. Okay. That's fine. Try it, Alva. I don't mind Decay on Strix and just get aggressive here. Seems like a little bit of a waste, but I think just starting to attack is what I really need to start doing here to get in front. And my opponent can't really cast anything here with the seats offline, so that's nice. I can see that MTG Goldfish has Card Kingdom at 1,000. 1,100 if you're gonna say that, and that's just for reserved, which is crazy. Has a tabby jumped? Is it the Tabernacle? Yes. 2/6. Okay. Well, that's pretty close to lights out. Bizarre. I'm gonna say like 6. 3. Okay. Still cool. LED is fine. I feel like MTG Card Market is a great place to buy Magic cards, because it seems always a little bit behind prices of what the US is. Which is a great thing, but if you want to buy it off, you do need a EU address. What could my opponent be drawing into? They currently have 4 colorless mana. Like, I don't think that Khan fetching... Like, maybe Khan fetching like a Batterskull, which I don't think they'll be playing, is kind of an out. Plague Engineer. Okay. It's definitely a start. Now I need like a questing beast. Swords. Interesting. I think just Leyline here is fine. An exalted creature would be fantastic. Not the Skyclave, okay. I kind of just want to hold the Skyclave here. Doesn't really do anything either. Okay, yeah, Strix is pretty annoying. I believe all my plagues are on the board, yeah. Gonna take this. So I could Swords the Plague and then Skyclave the Baleful Strix if I want to get in for 5, which is pretty good. I think I will Swords the Baleful Strix just to take them off. If I give them 2, they go up to 8. And then they get to use the Ancient Tomb again. If I put them up to 7 and then attack for 5, they go to 2, which means they can't use the Ancient Tomb. So I think here I'd rather just take them off the Baleful Strix. And then Skyclave the Plague instead. It's pretty good. This means that next turn if I draw into a land, we can Green Suns for Questing Beast. Nice. That's pretty huge. It also means that just an all-out attack is most likely a win as well, which is nice. Yeah. A really tough spot, especially once my opponent had the oof down. I don't think my opponent has a way out of the oof unless you can go wide with the 2020 with the tokens off Urza. I don't think the you know, like Walking Blister obviously doesn't do it. They could be running a bounce spell perhaps, maybe something like Echoing Truth. But yeah, Collector Oof just so good against that deck. Deck feeling okay. I think I probably would change the mana up. I think that maybe it's a little bit greedy having just 22 and the Cradle with the 5 mana dorks. Maybe I should go up to 23. Yeah, Stony Silence Creatures is really good. I think the best part of it being a Green Suns target is that if your opponent doesn't respond with like a Vial Activation or floating mana off their artifact lands, and you get a Collector Oof instead of maybe getting like a Gaddock Teeg or a Scooz or something else that might be relevant against the matchup that you're playing, then you can just like get them, which is kind of cool. Alright, Chabba. Let's do this. I'm going to keep this hand. Turn 1 Bird, turn 2 Hexdrinker, hold up Swords, or Wasteland. We haven't played against a Snow Basic yet, so we'll see what my opponent does here. Oh, Bayou. Okay. Interesting. Into Elvish Reclaimer. Okay. Well, I probably don't mind just Swords, Wasteland, and Hexdrinker. Seems... Oh my gosh. That's fine. That's all good. That's all good. In case they're on Elves, I might just hold up the Sword. Yeah, I definitely meant to play the Wasteland. That's unfortunate. Hey Guan, thanks for the follow. Let me know where you're from. If you play Legacy, what you play in Legacy. Tick up is nice here though. Yeah, it is nice that now it only takes 2 to level... I guess 1 more to level it up. Thoughtseize. Pretty good. Main deck Thoughtseize. Interesting. Wasteland's okay. Are they just going to try to Wasteland me? That's interesting. I'm definitely Wastelanding them. And then it's either Skoos or Bird. I think I just like the Hex Drinker in case they're playing Fatal Push. Just to really turn this into like a mini Progenitus for now. Interesting line from my opponent. Quite aggressive. Urborg. Okay, so it's like a rock style deck perhaps. High Rock's actually pretty sweet. I am going to crack it because I want to play both of these green cards. But seeing that I haven't shown black yet myself... Ah, of course, it could just be slow depths. That's very true. So let's go for Savannah. I don't want to show that I'm on the Black Splash. And then let's go for Scavenging Ooze. High Rock. Swing for 5. There are currently no creatures in the bin, which is a little bit scary. I mean, if they have Elvish Spirit Guide Crop Rotation, then they just have it, which kind of makes me want to hold up the bird here. Interesting. They just didn't have it. Depths. Depths. I don't mind Engineer just because it can turn off Hexmage. Let's have a quick look at this. Make this bigger. Oof is probably irrelevant. It can hit Moxes or Petals, whatever they're on, but I think it's pretty meh. Kaya is also a little bit meh. I think just the third Skyclave is kind of nice in case you're on the slow version. I do want more answers to something like Bob or Sylvan Library, and it's probably just a better card than what I can take out. But I think overall I don't need too much. Hey Wolf, welcome.
You're so polite.
Thanks, Google. Yeah, I mean, I think this matchup is very favored for Maverick. And Thalia is not the worst. They do run a lot of non-creature spells, and they do run a pretty low mana base. I don't think there's actually a card here that's better than Thalia, other than maybe a Planeswalker. Kai is interesting because just getting the 2 life and going above 20 can be really relevant. But it might just be like trimming and then finding some ways to like get some life gain going. But tough one. I think thankfully it's kind of a luxury choice. Pretty meh. I mean, this deck is going to be running a lot of hand disruption, and if they take the Thalia, we don't really have anything going on. So pretty happy to mulligan this. We have the Caracas, which is nice, but otherwise the mana's a little bit rough. Kaya also exiles the 2020. Yeah, that's very true. Which is why we boarded one out. No, okay, good. We brought it back in. Big question is this better than a 5? And it probably is. Playing it very fair, though. My opponent also went to 5, so I probably should have looked at that before I made a decision. Safekeep is going to be pretty strong. You're going to Thoughtseize me, okay. It's a pretty good draw. I'm going to play the Crackers because I know they have Sylvan Safekeeper, which I'm pretty happy to see if I can Swords. They did reveal Wastelands, but I think this is okay. Safekeep is fine. Land, Scoos. Which takes us up to 21, which is relevant. They're also down to 1 card. I guess they could have Hexmage and Dark Depths, but otherwise it's pretty hard. Bob's pretty good, but they're at a pretty low life total already. I kind of want to draw a 1 or 2 drop so I can attack with mana up for the night. But see what happens. Surely there's no way that they block the Scoos as a 2/2. Get to go Savannah into Tracker, then hold up Verdant Catacombs. It definitely could. The only issue is that if they have like an Abrupt Decay or a removal piece, then I'm still just down to 1 removal spell. I kind of like that I get to use all my mana here effectively and get a second threat on the field that's going to be pretty hard to beat because it makes another X3 next turn that I can attack with. And now, yeah, Thoughtseize is just irrelevant now, which is kind of nice. They have a Hexmage. That's okay. They have 1 card left. They can do some awkward things with how they block, because they can deal first strike, then sack it to remove counters. But I'm pretty happy just attacking with both here anyway. That's the block? Okay, I'm more than fine with this. Hey, thanks MTG bot. The Painland draw was really rough for my opponent. I mean, 3 Painlands and then... yeah. Rough. Well, we get the 4/1, which is kind of nice. But... some interesting leagues. I think the mana could probably change up a little bit. Even just an extra fetch land, especially with the Tiles Tracker in the deck. I think an extra fetch is more than fine. Yeah, overall the deck seemed pretty good. The going down to Loam was a little bit rough, but it definitely showed some inconsistencies in the deck. I'm not too sure if I want more early answers to things in the fair matchups, but I think having the 4 swords and the 2 decays in the main deck is more than fine. And then having the flexibility of a 3rd plague or a 3rd skyclave in the board is pretty sweet. Canonist is interesting as another piece of hate against combo, because it also comes over to elves, which is pretty sweet. I'm not playing tomorrow, unfortunately, but I might even just take the day off and then stream on Sunday, which should be pretty cool. But the deck otherwise was pretty good. There were times where I kind of missed having something like a Stoneforge Mystic in the deck. The Hex Drink was fine, the Tireless Tracker was fine, and the nice thing about having sort of the 4 to 5 slots, or 6 slots, however you want to call it, with Stoneforge is that you're really just playing either more Hate or more Green Suns targets, which makes Green Suns more effective, and it also means you're going to be drawing into Hate a lot more, which is nice. Yeah, there's a winner duel at Good Games Spring Hill. But yeah, it was really nice to have the Black Splash tonight. I think it's still one of the best ones to do in regards to splashes, because I mean Plague just gives you so many more answers to decks that you traditionally don't have access to. You can find content for the other versions on my YouTube channel, which I've been playing recently. Band's been pretty consistent because you do have turn 2 Okos, and you also have Uro and Meddling Mage in the board, which is pretty great against some of your lesser decks. Things like Elves or Doomsday or Show and Tell. But all in all, the deck seemed pretty sweet. I was pretty happy with it. Yeah, I think on Sunday morning I'll just be running a similar deck, maybe with a change to the deck, because I do have to cut 1 card for the extra land. I'm not too sure where it is. You're liking the Dark Depths package? Yeah, the Depths package is pretty cool. It's a nice kind of backdoor win plan against some decks, especially like Elves, where you can just get them. I really like it in the green-white versions myself, because then you get to kind of use up your space in your land drops for utility lands like Stage and Depths. But of course, Depths you wouldn't count as a land, you'd count as a spell. You're testing 4-color? Nice. Yeah, blue is interesting. Blue also gives you access to Leo, which is a pretty nice 3-drop for the decks where you don't want a Green Suns for Night. You get access to Meddling Mage, which does improve a lot of your matchups that you have some pretty poor times against. And then, of course, Oko and Uro are really nice. Uro, not a card that I have aggressively fetched for, but it's really nice off the top of the deck. And there is, some decks like Delver that just have a really hard time beating it sometimes. So, yeah, thankfully didn't play against Oko or Dreadhorde tonight. I guess we played against Oko. We played against it in 4-color Loam. But, yeah, otherwise this deck was pretty solid. I still think Leyline is the best graveyard hate. You could be playing something like Nihil Spellbomb or Containment Priest or Surgical, but I think the amount of wins that I've got from Leyline just from playing it have been pretty huge, especially against Hogak. So that's pretty key as well. Eldumri's Call is an interesting one. I guess if you're playing Fairy Macabre as well, then Eldumri's Call is pretty cool because you can instant speed Graveyard Hate. Yeah, that's really it. I'm gonna quickly see who else is streaming. Sometimes Into Play is streaming with Legacy, but it looks like just True Hero. True Hero is currently playing Vintage, but that's pretty sweet. What's that? True Hero. Nice. My bad. I'm all over the shop tonight. But yeah, pretty nice to get the 4-1. If you guys want to find me on YouTube, you can find me here, of course. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me here or at thegreensunzenith.com. I'll be back on Sunday morning for, probably just a run back of the same deck. It was pretty sweet. Hey, Code, a huge thank you. D5, you two, have a great day. A huge thank you for the 3 month sub. That means a lot. I hope you're well. I hope you enjoy your weekend ahead. and I will hopefully see most of you on Sunday. A huge thank you once again. Enjoy True Hero. Laters.